Hey there. Very cool. All right. Let's see who we got over here. Oh, we got some folks online. This is great. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Is everybody in? Huh? Oh, got it. Always first times are always a little bit,
Yeah, everybody's very active. We have to get our act together.
I don't know. It's good. No, we're talking about like people went to the other building, whatever. We'll get everything clarified. Okay. Alex and Mariana, good to see you guys.
Good morning. Good morning, Ari.
You guys remember Beth Tefillah?
Absolutely.
Yes, it was our community.
Absolutely.
You
Wow.
guys were here. Wow, it is so great to see you guys.
Well, they told us, we received a letter, they told us they had just renamed it to Kabbalah Cafe.
Yes, Kabbalah Cafe. The formerly Kabbalah and Coffee, now Kabbalah Cafe. Exactly. Wow, it is great to see you all. All right, the bagels should be fairly precise, but there's also a sharp knife. And there you go. All right, good. Wow, it is wonderful to see you guys here in person as well online. That's how we like to do these things, a little hybrid.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I just got texted by Joy Gordman and Alex Pollock, and they're trying to find your building and they can't find it. Is there anything I can tell them about how to find it?
How they might be at the other location at 51. Well, the question is, where are they?
Yeah, they're at 5180.
Yeah. All right. We're at 50. We're a few minutes away at 56. What is it? 5065?
Yeah.
5065 High Point Road, Beth Tefillah.
5065.
High Point. And once they're here at High Point, then they have to find their way in the building. No, then it should be fairly easy.
Okay.
All right. This is just like I said before. This is like first time, huh? Yeah. And or logistics, one of those things. Okay. Okay. Thank you for passing along that information.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, good. So I think we're just about ready to start. Give me a quick second. You are not interfering with me at all. That's the good news. Or I don't know. Either way is good. Yeah, not at all. You are good right where you are. Okay. Let's check this out. All right. So, all right. Well, we hope that they'll navigate those that are looking for us at the other building. See, that's where the offices are. And this is where we're doing the class. So that's the confusion. Yeah, no problem.
There's more in there.
Yeah. Hence the email had the address of there in the footer, but then the more information about the class had this location for the actual class location. So hence the confusion, but we're gonna get in. Danielle, great to see you. I'm gonna welcome our online crew. Danielle, welcome. Ray, welcome.
Good morning.
Alex and Mariana. Danielle, listen, we miss you. You're now in Arizona. By the
In
way,
Arizona, and you're sitting in my stomping grounds.
I know. I'm like in your space.
Yep, it's awesome.
Yeah. Jessica says hi. David, Joy, Tim, Karen, Pam, Yaakov, Joy. Wow, it's great to see everybody. Okay, so a few words of intro. First of all, it is wonderful to see you all. It is great to be here. It is great to have the opportunity to study Kabbalah and Chassidus together, especially with such a special topic. We're getting ready for the high holidays. And the topic today is going to be about, and for the next little bit, will be all about the high holidays. And I also want to thank, we have some special sponsors for today's class. I'd like to thank Dr. Joy Maxey. Thank you very much for helping sponsor today's class. Joy Gordman and Alex Pollock, thank you very much for sponsoring the class. I know that they're en route over here, so you'll let them know that we thank them. We have Alex Doman, thank you very much for helping sponsor today's class. Sarah Ingram, thank you for helping sponsor today's class. Let's see, did I miss it? Yes, Joy Russo. Thank you, Joy, for sponsoring, helping sponsor today's class. Sandrine, thank you for helping sponsor today's class. And I think that is it so far for today. It's not too late to get in on it. But thank you very much for helping sponsor Kabbalah Cafe. All right, I think we're ready to get recorded. We're ready to launch into the topic. This is buckle up because this is going to be, please God, absolutely incredible. All right, what we're going to do. Hey, you found us. Yes. Excellent. I just thanked you, by the way, for the sponsorship. Both of you, thank you very much. And I'm glad you found us. Okay, by the way, there's, I don't know if the coffee and tea is hot yet, but it's there. There's milk in the fridge, which can be pulled out. And then there's bagels, lox, and cream cheese. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, listen, like I said before a few times, we're learning the way around this space. At least I am. We all are. This group is. All right, so let's get rock and roll. All right, friends, we are starting today to study a discourse, a Hasidic discourse, known in Hasidic parlance as Ranat. Ranat. Now, why is it called Ranat? You know what the answer is? Why not? Can't take me anywhere. Literally cannot. All right, why not? Ranat is one of those classic Hasidic. It's known as a hemshech. A hemshech means it's not only a discourse, it's a series of mystical texts that are all intertwined, which means, and I'll tell you exactly when this happened, 1898. It's 124 years ago, this Rosh Hashanah. It was the second night of Rosh Hashanah that the fifth Chabad Rebbe, known as the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shalom Dober Schneerson, he began to develop mystical ideas that were absolutely revolutionary for the time, and still today, as we'll see, even today are revolutionary. And he started to develop these concepts about the high holidays that continued, I think, for a series of 8 or 9 different discourses, or maybe more. And they're all compiled together in a book called Sefer HaMaimarim, the Book of Discourses of Tafresh Nuntes. Now, Tafresh Nuntes is the year 5659. But for those of us that are used to the old 18, 19, and 2000s of years, so it's 1898. It begins in 1898 and it culminates in Hey, great to see you. 1898 and 1899. The series of discourses is one of those that when you study in yeshiva, when you study Chassidus and the deeper mystical teachings of Torah, when you study in yeshiva, this is one of the first series that you study. In other words, it's one of these seminal ideas, big ideas. And to frame it, there's many different ways to frame this discourse, but here's how I want to frame it. And I want to frame it by actually asking you guys a question. And that is, when you think of the high holidays, what comes to mind? High holidays, something. What comes to mind? Repentance, New Year, what else? There's no wrong answer. Huh? Fresh start. Good. Very positive of you, by the way. Super positive. All right. What else? What else might someone typically feel and think about the high holidays?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, good. A little somber. How do we pick God? How might we, sorry?
Family,
good. Apples and honey. Shofar, by the way, today is the first day we sound the shofar. I had the shofar on my table at home to bring. And guess now, by me saying that, you know the end of the story, right? It's still on the table to bring. But today we start sounding the shofar. You would think. Again, I don't know my way around. It took me about 15 minutes to figure out where the hot water thing is to fill it up. There's a learning curve. Anyway, the point is like this. When we think about Rosh Hashanah, many of us think about, again, maybe present company excluded, but many people think about the high holidays in some somber tones, right? Heavy and somber and like maybe dogmatic. Is dogmatic a good word? Why not? Right? Dogmatic, it's very heavy, it's very top down, it's like God is on the throne, right? You know that prayer in Nasana Tokev? We talk about how everybody passes in front of God like sheep pass in front of the shepherd, and God counts and takes note of each one, and then God decides who will live and who will die. Everyone's crying, right? I'm not making light of it, although I'm smiling. No, but it's like everyone's crying and it's like very serious and it's like somber. And it's, who will live and who will die, and who by thirst and who by fire and who by water and who by lapidation. Everyone's like, I don't know what lapidation is, but I don't want to go that way either. Like lapidation. It'll be so awkward. Huh? Wild beasts? Yeah, it's not fun. Do they have stuff? Might be. Yeah. It's like, wow. It's like, who would have thought there's like 20 different ways? It's like, oh my gosh, like, don't take me this year. Like, we just a general prayer. They say, tshuva, tefillat tzedakah, repentance, right? Tshuva was mentioned, repentance, prayer, and charity avert the severity of the decree. And that's how we finish that prayer. And we're like, oh, like maybe there's still a chance. Maybe there's a chance. And we be forgiven to think that the high holidays are all about this power dynamic where God's in control and we're pleading for our lives and we're begging for our lives. Correct? This is not like, this is not that far out, right? This is what we might have thought, or we might think, or others might think, correct? This is not like totally beyond the pale. All right. However, as we know, this is, I'll tell you a line that my father-in-law likes to say. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he introduced a new God. Now, okay, he doesn't actually mean introduce a new God, but introduce a new reality, a new understanding of God. And that is, imagine God as a loving parent. Imagine God as a loving parent. Now, what's the nature of a loving parent? Nature of a loving parent is you want the best for your kid, right? It's like if you're going to a Kabbalah class Sunday morning, you want your daughter to go. Oh, hey guys. Right. So you want to go, right? So you want to go, you want your daughter to go, you want your son. It's like you want the best for your family, right? That's the nature of a loving parent. You want the best for your kids. So imagine if God, let's just go like kind of out there. Let's think crazy. Imagine if God was a loving parent, theoretically. Spoiler, he is. But let's say theoretically, where God is a loving parent. You think you have to beg a parent? Imagine a parent that says that if you want dinner tonight, you're going to have to beg for it. And I will decide who gets potatoes and who gets salad. Who buy in our house. Okay, so here we go. You guys ready? We just moved into a new house. We're getting to learn the new house also. By the way, last night, our power goes out. Anybody else's power go out?
No.
Huh? No. All right, it was just me. Ironically enough, we live on a street called Battery Place. Just saying, really? Battery Place? It's supposed to have a generator. Guess what didn't turn on last night? The generator. Anyway, like a backup thing. I have to figure out how that works. I'm not sure. I've never had a generator before. The point is that we have in this new house, amongst other new things, there's a drawer. I didn't even know this. There's like a kitchen cabinet drawer, like 2 drawers. It looked like, let me put some pots or something in there. And it's a fridge out of nowhere. It's like 2 little drawers. Yeah. Like, oh, that's cute. Look at that. It's like, you know what we're going to put there? Seltzer. You know why? Because our my kids, make it a safe space for me. My kids, me, we're all obsessed with seltzer. You guys know this, right? LaCroix, lacrosse, whatever. It's like that's what LaCroix is. Right? Am I wrong? LaCroix. Anyway, we've koshered it though. We've replaced it with Stars of David everywhere.
It's a city in Wisconsin or something.
Oh, it is.
That's nothing to
All
do with
perfect.
cross.
Perfect. I feel better now.
Yeah.
Feel less guilty. I'm gonna return all my bubbly next thing you know. All right. So anyway, back to the story. So one of the unintended consequences is that there's more seltzer going than ever because it's easy access. It's such easy access. For example, don't judge me, please. So I feel like I want this to be a safe space for everyone, including myself. I bought 56 cans of seltzer before Shabbos. Now, I've not taken account. I would be better if I had a count and ready to report back for duty. However, I do not have a count yet, but I would be very intrigued to know how many are left after tonight. 56, you would think 56 cans, that's about a month. No, easy access. Imagine if it was like, no, if you want a seltzer, right? Like start putting in like a coin credit card swiper thing. Remember those old ones that had you put in like 4 coins, you pushed it in, you pulled it out. I don't even know what that was for, but it was a great feeling. Remember that? You just lined up. It was a laundry. Ooh, yeah. We don't have a lot wash and dry yet, so I may be needing to do some of that at some point soon. All right, back to the story. All right, so what do we got? If God is a loving parent, A loving parent, forget about God for a second. A loving parent does not put their kid through the ringer to get something that they want or need. Now, not everything they want is healthy, and sometimes you have to say no and whatever. Obviously, whatever. But a healthy parent is not looking to like assert dominance and power over the other. Correct? That's not healthy, right? A parent shouldn't be looking to their kid like someone to serve them or to give them a sense of power, right? That's not. To be propped up and to feel good about oneself, that's the role of social media, not children. I'm kidding, right? So like, what's up? It's another class. So anyway, so like, what's going on? And so the Baal Shem Tov says that our notion of God is mistaken, and God is not some sort of unruly, some sort of, angry. Hey, welcome. Good morning. Some sort of angry, unruly, whatever dictator that's looking to get us, and we have to pray. And it's like, remember those old Westerns? Yeah. Where the guy's like, dance, cowboy. He's like shooting at the guy's feet. You know that one? I don't know. I have some sort of image somewhere on some plane that I once flew on. Anyway, the point is like this. It's like God wants us to dance in order to eat. It's like, oh, you got to pray, you got to cry, or else, I don't know, lapidation, whatever that is. Come on. Is that what's going on? So I think many of us, maybe not here at this table, but many people have a sense that the high holidays are all about a heaviness and a dread and a power dynamic and a lot of dogma and a lot of, dancing to eat and a lot of, having to do this in order to get that. And in other words, it's a state where the power is with God, and we're the ones that need to perform, right, to get what we need. And Kabbalah and Hasidus come along and say that that's not correct, that's not accurate. In fact, if you really look at the relationship, the opposite is true. And that is that we have the power in the relationship and God is vulnerable. Let me explain. Question is, why did God create a world? Why did God create any of this? Our understanding of God is existence itself. Who and what is God? Is God like some old dude with a beard on a throne? Obviously not. If God at any point came into being, the question is, where did God's being come from? And then let's call that God, right? You with me on this? Like whatever came first, we would call God. So nothing can precede God, or else that would be God. You guys with me? How strong is the coffee? I think we need some strong coffee right now. Here's the point. The Jewish understanding of God, based on Kabbalah and Chassidus, is that God, Hashem, is existence itself. In the language of Maimonides, Amitas Metzias, God is the truth of existence from which all other existence emanates from. In other words, everything else is not truly alive. Why? Because if your life, I don't mean you specifically, if the existence of a thing is dependent on something else, then it doesn't own its own existence completely. Are you with me on this? Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's why Rashi says, for example, a fetus is not a full life. Why? Because its life is not self-generated. It cannot survive without the mother at that stage. So anything that relies on something else for its very existence cannot be considered, welcome, good to see you, good morning, cannot be considered to be truly alive. Why? Because life means, not alive, not necessarily alive, but truly exist, because existence means that you exist. You have your own existence, you have your own source of vitality. And as long as, good morning, and as long as existence does not have its own self-generated, as long as a thing does not have its own self-generated existence, it's a little bit less than true existence. It's a little bit less than true. So again, Maimonides says, Rambam says that Amitas, Hamatze, that the true existence is Hashem, is God, from which or from whom all other existence derives and is generated from. So everything else, let's put it in different terms. Everything that exists other than God is what we might call conditional existence. It's existence that exists on condition that something else makes it exist. You with me on this? It's contingent on something else. It doesn't have its own existence. It's contingent on something else making it be. God is self-generated. God is self-generated. God just is. God is isness. That's his business. Your husband talks about that, isness, right? Yeah. The isifier, right? God is, purely and simply is, not because, not from, not due to the fact that God is. So why are we here? So there was a choice.
Question for you.
Yeah.
You say a fetus is not self, it's dependent.
Yeah.
Got it, I agree. No, that matters. But what about a human being?
It's all relative. It's all relative. In other words,
I mean, it's not self-generated.
right, correct. Yeah. So relative to a child that's born, the fetus is not self-reliant.
For sure.
Now, when a child is born, also not self-reliant, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta feed the child, take care of the child, right? Dress the child,
So
teach the
that's
child.
where you say
So it's all relative, right? It's relative, right? It's like you ask a Jewish mother, when is the fetus viable? That graduates medical school. That's the old classic.
that used to be.
At used, yeah. Anyway. So yeah, so God is, as Adam's writing, God is absolute reality. And the universe, in other words, everything else is relative. I like that. Relative reality. Relative reality or contingent reality, conditional reality. It's contingent, conditional, it's relative to something else, vis-a-vis something else. Question is, why did God create this? Like, what was in it for God? And this question, in other words, the question of like, why are we here? That people ask, why are we here? Somebody might ask it in the first person, why am I here? People ask it at different times and different stages in life. Why am I here? What's it all about? What's the purpose? Usually it's, that's when people buy Ferraris. It's like, why am I here? I don't know, but let me get a sports car. And that probably will fix them. No, but like really the question, like, why am I here? What's it all about really? And so in Kabbalah, we have different answers. In Kabbalah, we have different answers that help to address this. And the answers are sometimes contradictory, sometimes complementary. I'm not going to get into all the answers, but one answer is, which I love, is that God wanted a relationship. You see, you can't have a relationship with self. Now, I know you can, right? There's relationship with self and self-care and all that stuff. That's fine. But a real deep relationship is really one that's shared with someone else that has the choice not to be in that relationship. So let me explain. The value of a relationship, one area of value of relationship is someone else that had free choice, that has free choice and their own mind and their own heart and their own desires, etc., and chooses to be with you. Now we're talking. Now that's a relationship. A relationship is, see, if you program, what was that movie? The guy has a relationship with a computer. Her? Yeah. I was thinking her. I'm like, is that the right one? I didn't see it. I just know enough about it to be dangerous and to reference it. So her, huh? Oh. It was a setup the whole time, Samantha. You really called it Samantha? You go by Sam, so that's fine. Still hurts. Hey, good morning. So are we out of, by the way, are we out of like, because there's so much more. Everything. Lox, bagels, cream cheese, Kabbalah, there is. We are stopped. Okay, I can't, I'm asking. I'm asking. All right. Should I say, you know why they put locks on the ark? Have a safer Torah. It's bad. It's super bad. And that's why we don't do these types of jokes here at Kabbalah Cafe. Back to the story. So a relationship is valuable when the other had the choice to not be in that relationship. In other words, when the other one, if the other one had to be in the relationship, if you program the relationship, and it's like, oh, they love me because they said they love me, then how valuable is that love? How valuable is the love that's coerced? That's not love. Which is why I think we've all had experiences where we've said something loving to someone else. They've replied in a loving way. And we felt, I don't know. Did you really mean that? Or did you say because I said it? Ever had that feeling? Obviously, present company excluded. But in general, right? It's like, are you really like saying I love you? Or is it like, because I just said that? Wait a second. It feels really good when you know the other one had the choice to not say it, and they on their own came up with it. Then you know, you feel loved, feel validated. Now, does this position God as some needy, all-powerful being that needed love? Maybe. But that's kind of the way this line goes. That God, again, there's many other ways of explaining creation, but one way of explaining it is that God wished to have a relationship. The nature of a relationship is vulnerability. What do I mean by vulnerability? It means that you put yourself out there, and because the other one is not a program that you've created, the other one is not being coerced in a relationship, because of that, now you have to wait, sometimes on pins and needles. Will they reciprocate, or even better, will they initiate love toward me? And that's the vulnerability. So the overwhelming theme of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays, according to the Jewish mystics, the overwhelming energy of the high holidays is not the power dynamic in which God has the power and we are the weak party, and we have to somehow appease and play towards God's desire for power and to be, but rather where God stands, so to speak, in a state of vulnerability, in a state of expectation. I don't mean expectation like I'm demanding something, but in anticipation, better than expectation. In a state of anticipation, waiting, will we acknowledge God? Will we acknowledge him as our God? Will we turn to him? Will we choose him? You watch Bachelor? Well, God's like, will I get that final rose? Will I get the rose? Or is it going to go somewhere else? Like, who's going to get the rose? It's vulnerable. There's vulnerability there because you don't know where it's going to go. By the way, God created a dimension where the relationship is forced. And the beings have no choice other than to praise God and say, we love you so much, you're amazing. Those are angels. And God says, great, I have the angels, not doing it for me. God kept on going till he got us. And the beauty of us, when I say us, I mean human beings, the beauty of human beings is that we can go in any direction, usually in the same day, right? We can go any direction. Some moments we're connected, some moments we're disconnected, and that only makes the connection meaningful. The fact that we disconnect, or at least could disconnect, makes the choice of connection that much more valuable. If we never disconnected, then is it a choice to connect? Are you with me on this? It makes sense? The fact that we can disconnect, the fact that we oftentimes do disconnect, means that when we choose to come back around and say, God, you know what? I'm leaving that behind. I'm back in. I'm back together with you. Let's hang out. Let's hang out and pray a little bit. Let's hang out and meditate. And I'll meditate about you. When we choose God in those moments, that's what makes the relationship special. It's a choice in those moments. But again, I don't want to lose the plot over here. The main idea that I'm trying to express is that the power dynamic that we typically think of, especially around the high holidays, where God has the power and we're like groveling, like, please, God, don't lapidation us. Lapidate? Is that a thing? No one knows. So I think it's fire. I think lapidation is fire. Is that true? I just made that up. It's fine. Yeah, no, someone can Google that. Everyone's got something to Google on. What's the point? The point is that the dynamic that we typically think of, where God has the power and we're vulnerable and we're begging for our lives, please don't kill us. Please give us another year, right? Like sheep. It is stoning. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Not at all fire.
Sometimes it says so.
Interesting. I usually use the one that says lapidation. So I'm like, I don't know what that is. If you don't know what it is, it can't hurt you, right? But you don't know. Ignorance is bliss. What we typically think of the power dynamic, God has the power and we're begging. It's actually the opposite. God is waiting for us to choose him. God is wanting nothing more than a relationship with us. And if we turn our backs, we have the power in the relationship. And one way to understand this is using some terms of Kabbalah and Chassidus. There's a term called mashpia and a term called mekabel. Mashpia is a giver and mekabel is a recipient. So when it comes to the giver-recipient dynamic, we typically think that who has the power? The giver. The giver has the power. The giver has the power and the recipient is the weaker party in that dynamic. Not according to Jewish mystical thought. The giver wants to give. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called a giver. You with me on this? If the giver's a giver, then they're a giver. It's called the truism. Right? The giver's a giver. But without a recipient, the giver can't be a giver. The giver wants the recipient to be open to receive. And if the recipient is not open to receive, the giver can't be a giver. This is where Kabbalah and Chassidus, Jewish mystical thought, flips the entire dynamic. We typically think that top and bottom, right? So top has the power, bottom is more vulnerable, has the weakness. Kabbalah flips it. Really, the recipient has the power in a very strong sense. It's the power of basically determining and charting the nature of this relationship. It's flipped. And this is the opening discourse of the Hemshech of the series of discourses called Ranat, named after the year 5659, 1898, going into 1899. The first discourse speaks about the power of the recipient, the power of the mekabel, the power of the one on the receiving end, and how the one on the receiving end has more power ultimately than the one who is given.
Rabbi?
Yes.
So that I believe that this is a really good way to view the nature of the world and why we're here. But when we talk about vulnerability and we talk about God wanting anything, and we start talking about a relationship. The last I heard, a novel where the characters don't change and don't grow, and nothing really, they don't evolve. It's a pretty boring story. So are we the only ones evolving or changing? Because how do we juxtapose all of these ideas with the other theme that God never changes and God never needs anything? And if he doesn't need anything, then he doesn't really have any skin in the game.
Now you're asking like the question of all questions. Does God have a need? Oh, now you're asking a good question. Good. To answer it, we need to study a lot a lot of text on this. The short answer is, it's kind of like, can God create a rock that he can't lift? Maybe. I don't know if that's the same question, but does God have a need for a relationship, or is it a want for a relationship? And if it's a need or a want, and God is therefore vulnerable, aren't we thereby taking away from the power of God? Right? Are we making him a little less omnipotent than before this conversation? These are very good questions. They're discussed at length and in depth in Hasidic texts and Hasidic discourses. The short answer is, it's kind of like who was it, Niels Bohr and Einstein, the two great physicists of the 1900s, where there was a big movement about indeterminism, where you can't determine, it's quantum physics, right? You can't determine locations of things, and Einstein was not on board with that, and he said famously in a letter to Bohr, he said, God doesn't play dice with the universe. And Bohr writes back to him, he says, don't tell God what to do, right? So that was the dialogue, right? God doesn't play dice, don't tell God what to do, right? You say God's not vulnerable. Maybe the answer is, don't tell God how to be. Maybe God chooses to be vulnerable. He even has that. If he has everything, he even has that, the ability to choose to be vulnerable and to be needy. Does that take away? I don't know. Depends how you understand take away, right? Depends how you understand having everything. Does everything include not having any need, or does everything include having a need that's chosen or that's essential? Ultimately, if we say that God has no need, then really we're wasting. All right, step that back a quick second. If we say that God has no need, then one might call into question what we are doing here and the absolute relevance of our lives. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because if God doesn't have a need, then that would include not the need for us to perform Torah mitzvot, to make the world a better place, right? To have a home on earth, because it's not really a need. If that's the case, then what is it, a game? Busy work? It's like, why don't you guys do this? Why? Because I want it, wink. Do I really want it? No. But I'm telling you I want it so that you guys are busy. That's not satisfying. If we crack that code, then most of us would say, see you later. I'm part of your game, your non-essential game, it doesn't matter if I was playing this game. See ya. Checking out now. Status, Facebook. Anyone use Facebook anymore? Is there still a Facebook status? Remember when they started? It's like Ari Sollish is super happy about life, right? I think that doesn't exist anymore. No, right? There's no status. At this point, you go to Facebook again. Not that active on Facebook. It's like, I don't know. It's like Vegas. It's like, look here. All right. What's the point? If there's no essential need, right, then there's no essential meaning. There's no absolute value in what we're doing. Now, if you say there's absolute value because there's an absolute need, then aren't we making God needy? Uh-oh. Maybe. Yaakov, you're asking a good question. I mean, it's a question that is, it's a core question that's discussed in many texts. And ultimately, my understanding of the conclusion is that we have to say that on some level, it's an absolute need. Or at the very least, a need that desires from a want. In other words, God wanted this relationship and now he needs it. But some say that it's even a need on the deepest of levels. But that's not for today.
And it creates change, meaning God changes.
I don't know if God changes. All right, you're asking a good question. Yeah, you're asking a good question, and I don't know that we're gonna solve this today, but hold the question. Hold the question. It's like, it's good to marinate in the question as well. All right, so back to the story here, because I want to make sure that we're very clear on the arc of the conversation. We come in typically thinking God has the power, we don't have the power. And not that the point of this is that we have all the power, God has no power. No, but that God is vulnerable. God is making himself vulnerable and the power of the recipient. We've all seen the clips of Tom Brady. Any football fans? Tom Brady? Yeah, Tom Brady. Going to high five his teammates and them like just not paying attention. It's like awkward Tom Brady memes. Right? Right? Even Tom Brady sometimes gets rejected, and it's painful. It's painful, like third party, by proxy, painful. To be a mashpia without a makabel, to be a giver without a recipient, to be a high fiver without a high fivee. This can't say it. You can't live like that. It's like, who does that? You need, if you're putting yourself out there for the high five, you need someone to receive it. Otherwise, it hurts. Nothing that a $25 million contract can't solve. However, it's still right. It's still like I put myself out there and it didn't get. So the power really in any relationship, whenever somebody initiates, the power is always with the other. Right? If you think about it, the power is always with the other. Will they respond? How will they respond? Right? You already put your cards on the table. How are they? How are they going to respond? They have the power. That's the core of the seismic shift that happens in Chassidic thought around the high holidays, where it's a time that God is making himself vulnerable from a place of love. God says, I love you. No. What do you say? There are many different parallels of this in high holiday season. The shofar is on Rosh Hashanah is one proclamation of us saying, yes, we love you too. The mystics would feel faint from the onset of Rosh Hashanah until the shofar was blown the next morning, because of God waiting for the response of creation saying, yes, we choose you. We want to be in this relationship with you. The point is, though, that there is this space of vulnerability, because when it comes to top and bottom, giver, receiver, the receiver really is the one that has a strong measure of this power. It's not about power, but it's a strong sense of power. So this discourse explains this dynamic using very interesting terminology. It's going to talk about the power of speech, the power of a cup, feminine energy. This discourse will use lots of different parallels to discuss the dynamic, the duality of giver, receiver, mashpia, makabel, God, us, all to highlight the important role that we play in this relationship. Lest we think that God is the only part in this relationship, we just show up. The point here is that we are a dynamic component of the relationship, not only dynamic, but essential component. The way this discourse works, like pretty much every Chassidic discourse, is that it begins with an opening that allows, before we jump straight into the Kabbalah, the mystical ideas, we have an opening that is typically drawn from a verse in Torah or a statement from the Mishnah or the Talmud. This one comes from the Mishnah and Talmud. And it kind of allows us to segue into the mystical conversation using some familiar concepts. When I say familiar, some technically familiar concepts. So the discourse will open with a discussion about the laws of Rosh Hashanah and the blowing of the shofar. And through a process of asking a series of questions, we're then going to be set and ready to jump into the mystical conversation. It's been said that this is the passport. If you want to get into a country, you need a passport. What's the passport? The opening verse and the questions. That's like any Chassidic discourse. You have a passport to get into the conversation. So let's jump in. I think we're about ready to jump in. The texts we have are in Hebrew and English. Please pass. Oops, sorry. There we go. Please take and pass. I'll put up on the screen as well. I will tell you today, we're going to be dealing with the passport. We're going to be dealing with the opening conversation. We're probably not, we jumped into some of the mystical stuff already in this intro, but we're probably not going to get deep into the mystical conversation yet. But we're going to see some fascinating concepts. Now, I just want to show you what I have in my hands. This is a book that has the discourse that we're about to study. Rosh Hashanah Tafresh Tes, Rosh Hashanah 5659, 1898. This has the first three discourses of this series, of this Hemshech. The first three, Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah, Yechayenu Miyamayim, and Shuv Yisrael. Rosh Hashanah, When was this said? When was Yechayenu said? We have Rosh Hashanah. We have. Also Rosh Hashanah. And then we have Shabbat Shuvah. The first three discourses. If you'd like to pick up a copy, you can just Google it and find it. I'm sure it's on the publisher's website or on Amazon or somewhere. Maybe you could find it locally. I don't know. This is my copy. So if you want an actual book, because books are always great, it's always good to have a book, especially a Jewish book, a book of Chassidus and Kabbalah. So you can pick this up. Otherwise, you can, we have copies here as well. Either way is fine. All right, I'm going to share my screen for those that are joining us online, and we're going to jump right in. Quick second. All right, here we go. We jump right in. This is a very special moment. Yom Tov Shal Rosh Hashanah, 5659, 1898, with the help of heaven, second night of Rosh Hashanah, 5659. So this discourse was initially shared and revealed to the world 124 years ago, second night of Rosh Hashanah, the year 1898. And as I said, the opening is a bit technical. It's not as mystical as we might think. It's technical. And the technical beginning has to do with a conversation in Jewish law about what happens when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat, which happens. Now, the second, there's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Typically, holidays have 1 day in Israel and 2 days in the diaspora. Rosh Hashanah is always a 2-day holiday, whether you're out of Israel, whether you're in Israel. It's always a 2-day holiday. 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Why? Many people wonder why. Because you want to dip apples in honey for 2 days. It's delicious. It's fantastic, right? By the way, do you know why we dip apples in honey? It's weird, but there are more things that are sweet. Why apples and honey specifically? Good. One explanation, many different explanations. One that I love is that an apple spoils very quickly. You ever cut an apple and leave it out? Like within a few minutes, it's like brown. And a honey is a preservative. We dip the apple in honey, signifying that we're meant to take the temporal things of this world, the things that fade easily, physicality, and dip it into something a bit more spiritual, a bit more long-lasting. When we meet someone for lunch, should inject some meaning into it. So it shouldn't just end with lunch, but there should be a takeaway. You guys with me on this? All right. Be a year of meaning, even in the mundane. Back to our story. So we have a discussion about what happens when Rosh Hashanah. Now, the first day of Rosh Hashanah can fall out on Shabbat. The second day can never fall out on Shabbat. Why? Because the first day of Rosh Hashanah cannot fall out on a Friday. The way to remember this, if you're looking for Hebrew mnemonics, which I get from a website called HebrewMnemonics.com, which I just made up now. So Hebrew mnemonics. So there's something Lo Adu Rosh. Lo Adu Rosh. Rosh Hashanah cannot fall out on Adu. What's Adu? Aleph, Dalet, Vav. Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So a little calendar trivia for you. First day of Rosh Hashanah will never fall out on a Friday, which means that the second day of Rosh Hashanah will never fall out on Shabbat. The first day of Rosh Hashanah can, but not the second day. So now, what happens if day one of Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat? What do you do about the shofar? So your first reaction might be, what's the problem? Blow the shofar. Big deal. In practice, we do not blow the shofar. If Rosh Hashanah this year, it's not on Shabbos. It would be kind of cool if it was, but it's not. But if Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, you show up to shul, you're ready for your shofar, you're ready to go, you're going to be disappointed. You're not going to get a shofar. Why not? We're about to study the Mishnah that formulates this idea. Let's jump in. When the festival of Rosh Hashanah coincided with Shabbat, with Shabbos, the shofar was sounded in the Beit HaMikdash, so in the Holy Temple, in the ancient temple. They did sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah that was on Shabbat, but not in the province. What's the province? As Rashi explains, neither in Jerusalem nor in the rest of the land of Israel, let alone in the diaspora. You would not sound the shofar, Rosh Hashanah, that's on Shabbat, anywhere but the Holy Temple. Now the question is, that's what the Mishnah says. Now, if you know about it, the interplay between Mishnah and Talmud, so the Mishnah is the initial written compilation of the oral law, and the Talmud spends its time and earns its gelt by analyzing, picking apart, and trying to figure out the Mishnah in large part. So the Mishnah makes a statement. When Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat, no shofar for you. It was a Seinfeld episode, right? Yeah. So no shofar. No shofar, that's it. You're out. No shofar. What? I mean, isn't that why we're here? No shofar. What do we get? Apples and honey, but no shofar. What's the reason? Willy-nilly, they pulled out shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on Shabbat. Let's continue inside. The reason for this, explains the Talmud, is based on a rabbinic decree following the reasoning of Rabbi. In other words, Rabbi is one of the great sages in the times of the Talmud. He explains why. Shofar was pulled from the protocol, from the Rosh Hashanah script when it falls out on Shabbat. Rabbi said, and here's the quote, everyone's obligated in shofar blowing, but not everyone is skilled at it. Everyone has to hear the shofar, but not everyone knows how to do it. So the sages forbade it on Shabbos, lest one take it in his hand and go to one who is skilled to learn how the shofar is sounded, and thereby desecrate the Shabbos by carrying it 4 cubits in the public domain. Stay with me for a second on the logic. Imagine a person is at home on Rosh Hashanah. Let's say they can't go to synagogue for whatever reason. They don't go to synagogue. Now they need to blow the shofar. They have a shofar. Great. So shofar show good. That's fine. But now they don't know how to do the sounds. So what happens? So they're going to go to the rabbi. The rabbi, show me how to blow the shofar. But meanwhile, they're going to pocket, in their holster, little belt holster, like just take, I wish I had my shofar with me. I would like to do a live demo. Right? They're going to pocket their shofar, walk to the rabbi's house, and it's Shabbos. And one of the laws of Shabbos is that you don't carry something without an Erev, which we have in this community, but you don't carry without an Erev, you don't carry something in the public domain more than 4 cubits, i.e. 6 feet. Right? This is the original social distancing. Or not social distancing, right? 6 feet, you can't, because that's personal space is 6 feet.
Calls it 6 feet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So personal space is 6 feet. So you can't transport something more than 6 feet, more than 4 cubits in a public domain. Unless there is an Erev, which there is in this community. So the question is, the problem is someone's going to want to blow their shofar, not know how to do it, and then wish to take it to the rabbi and forget that it's prohibited to carry, and they're going to be carrying the shofar and violating Shabbat. So because of this, the rabbi said, you know what we're going to do to avoid this potential problem, this potential shofar kerfuffle? What are we going to do? Right? No shofar. No shofar for anyone. No shofar for anyone, because this guy doesn't know, is going to carry the shofar to the rabbi and possibly violate. Because of this far-fetched possible scenario, no one gets shofar on Shabbos. You know what's wild about this whole discussion? You know what's crazy about this whole conversation? You know about the shit, right? It's that you violate, when you have an aseh, a positive commandment, and a los aseh, negative commandment, the positive commandment knocks out the negative commandment. For example, a brit milah, circumcision. Child is born on Shabbos, which makes the 8th day the next Shabbos, because you always count that as day 1, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, again, Saturday, Shabbat. So now it's the next Shabbat, and Baruch Hashem, thank God the child is healthy and ready to go. Shabbos, you're not allowed to cut, make a wound in the body, draw blood. All these are forbidden on Shabbos. Do you do a circumcision or not? My firstborn son, aka Nassan, right, was born on Shabbos in Park Slope, Brooklyn, at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. And was born on Shabbos morning, and the bris was the next week on Shabbos. You bris on Shabbos. What's his name? Big Lebowski, Goodman? John Goodman. John Goodman might not have rolled on Shabbos, but we bris on Shabbos. So you bris on Shabbos. Anybody been to a bris on Shabbos?
My
Yeah.
son.
Your son. There you go. You bris on Shabbos. It's a thing. You're not allowed to cut, you're not allowed to draw blood, you're not allowed to make a wound, etc. Okay, but you have a positive commandment to a bris. So that pushes away the negative commandment. So you will be allowed to blow the shofar, and it's not violating Shabbos. The wild thing about this, you guys with me on this? So you said, is it playing a musical instrument? That wouldn't be a problem. Because you have a mitzvah of shofar, which is a positive commandment, that would override that problem. But you know what the problem? You know what the issue here is? The issue here is not you're doing the mitzvah. It's not in the act of commission of the mitzvah that you might be violating Shabbos. What's the potential violation of Shabbos? I don't know if I asked that question clearly. But is it in the act? Is it in the act of committing? Is it while committing the mitzvah? Is it while in the commission of the act of blowing the shofar that this potential violation is happening or not? No, it's not. It's in the pregame. It's a pregame show. That doesn't violate. That doesn't override Shabbos. Are you with me on this? The mitzvah itself could override Shabbos, but this is not the mitzvah. Taking it to the rabbi to figure out what to do. That's a lot. That's prep. It's like somebody saying, well, like whatever. A very far-fetched scenario. So when it comes to Shabbos, yes, if you have a positive mitzvah, like a bris, you do it on Shabbos. Just don't break the law. That's exactly the question. That's the question. The question is, because of this far-fetched scenario, somebody who's conscientious enough to want to take the shofar to the rabbi and is going to somehow forget in the same time that Shabbos is Shabbos, you can't carry it 4 cubits because of that, and because of that far-fetched scenario, just go to shul and the rabbi's doing it there anyway. It's like someone wants to do their personal shofar, and then they're going to carry it and they don't have it like that. And that's why no one gets shofar. No one gets shofar because of that. It's like the teacher in the class. It's like one spitball, big deal. No, I'm kidding. Right? And that's what the whole class is out from recess. This should never happen. This should never happen. I'm just saying, but this is like a collective punishment. No one gets shofar, not because anyone did anything. Somebody might potentially, in this very rogue scenario, do this thing. You with me on the question? All right, that's what he's about to ask. This seems quite puzzling. And by the way, this question is expanded on multiple dimensions. Before we read the question, I need to share with you something about questions. It's very important. So many of the times in life, so questions close doors. Very often, questions close doors. Good questions open doors. A really good question is actually a remember Plinko? Price is Right? Remember Plinko? Yeah. My favorite game. So you have the Plinko chip, right? Drop it on top. 0. So close. Plinko. It'll be great in Plinko. Imagine if you could put pegs to direct it exactly where you wanted to go. That would be a Plinko hack. Sometimes a wall is very good. Sometimes when you hit something, you can't go further. It's great. Sometimes it's not good. But sometimes it's great because it redirects you to the right path. A good question is a wall that points you into a different direction, says, this is not where your answer is. This is not where the idea is. This is not where the truth is, because there's an impenetrable wall. You can't get past this wall. It's such a good question. You got to look elsewhere. A good question opens up a brand new way of thinking by showing you that your prior way of thinking hits a wall, can't go further, can't go any further. The only way forward is by redirecting somewhere else. And that's where the truth lies. The Rebbe was a master of this. Our Rebbe was a master of this. Taking, for example, a Rashi, one simple comment of Rashi that people studied for 800 years, 2-line Rashi on the Torah, Rashi's commentary on Torah, very simple, very basic, very straightforward. And the Rebbe would ask a dozen questions and rip the whole thing apart. Before you know it, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And it wasn't for the sake of causing trouble. It wasn't for the sake of questioning everything. It was for a simple purpose. The simple purpose was to show us, to show the person that what we thought we knew just doesn't, it's stuck. That information, that knowledge is stuck. We have to look elsewhere for a response. The questions here, all of the questions here push us into a different space. The questions in a Hasidic discourse are the same thing. They push us into a different way of understanding. They're not asking questions for the sake of being argumentative or questioning. These are questions that are acting as directional louvers. Is that the word? Is that a word? Yeah. It pushes us into a different path. Let's read the question. This seems quite puzzling. How could the sages have dismissed a positive biblical commandment out of concern that one might commit a forbidden act? Should a mere concern, and again, a mere concern of somebody who wants to do the mitzvah but doesn't know and is going to forget at the same time that they can't carry in the public domain, should a mere concern warrant the suspension of a positive biblical commandment? You're going to pull the mitzvah just because of this rant, this, I don't know what to call it, sketchy, not sketchy, this concern seems very, very odd. Let's deepen the question by reminding ourselves what exactly we're talking about. This is not just a mitzvah. This is shofar. Shofar is one of the greatest mitzvot, as we're about to describe. The question, this question, is especially pronounced in the case of shofar blowing, a lofty and exalted mitzvah. Before we continue, let me explain that Rabbi's concern, or the way what Rabbi articulates, the concern of somebody not knowing how to do the mitzvah, therefore carrying it in the public domain, is not only with regard to shofar on Shabbos, it also has two more manifestations. Lulav on Sukkot. When Sukkot falls out on Shabbat, we do not do the lulav shake. Why? Same thing. Person might not be familiar with how to do it and carry their lulav in a public domain to the rabbi. Therefore, we say no lulav. There are three things that are canned because of this concern, or suspended because of this concern: shofar, lulav, and Megillah. If Purim would fall out, if it can't, because it's only one day of Purim in most places, and the sages realized that if it fell out on Shabbos and you wouldn't read Megillah, then you would not even have a second day or a second chance. It would be over. So Purim can never fall out. The calendar is rigged, can never fall out on, trigger word, anyway, whatever, the calendar is rigged, it can never fall out on Shabbos. Purim cannot, right? So you can do your Shalach Manos deliveries with no concern, with an open heart. Shofar, lulav, Megillah. If Purim would have theoretically fallen out on Shabbat, you would not read the Megillah, because again, somebody doesn't know, they go to the rabbi, they're carrying it, it's a problem. If you take the last letter of those three words, shofar, lulav, and Megillah, shofar is resh, lulav is bet, Megillah is hey, it spells the word Rabba, who is, told you, Hebrew mnemonics. What's that website that I made up before? Hebrewnamonics.com. There we go, we have another one. Rabba is hinted in this decree, Gzer de Rabba. Shofar, last letter, lulav, and Megillah. Hey. So the question is especially pronounced back inside in the case of shofar blowing, a lofty and exalted mitzvah. Indeed, he says the inner purpose of shofar blowing is to inspire tshuva, repentance, which is a mitzvah that transcends all others. In other words, the shofar is all about a wake-up call. The shofar says, Let's go. Which is why we start sounding the shofar, not as a mitzvah, but as a jolt of consciousness. We start sounding the shofar already 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. We started today. If you have a shofar handy somewhere in the building, we'll I don't mind doing the old shofar sounding here after this class in a few minutes. The point is that shofar is all about awakening us to pivot. Tshuva, repentance, I don't know, that has other connotations. Tshuva means return, to get back, to realign with God. Tshuva is about realignment. It means we're already essentially aligned. We have to get realigned, right? Realigned in a manifest way. And that's a mitzvah that transcends all others. Why is that a mitzvah? Why is tshuva? Why is this realignment a mitzvah that transcends all others? He explains. Thus, even if one was, God forbid, remiss in the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvot, it can be remedied through tshuva, since nothing stands in its way, and it elicits the forgiveness of sin. It follows then that tshuva, which is in fact the inner significance of shofar, transcends all other mitzvot. Tshuva has the ability to remedy all mitzvot that were missed. Tshuva is, in human relationships, a person might have done something, said something, acted in a way that was less than kind, less than loving toward a loved one. So there's two different ways, generally speaking, to fix that. One way is to say, I'm very sorry for doing X, Y, and Z. I plan on not doing that again. Like, that's my intention, not to repeat that. I'm very sorry. I won't do that again. That's one path. The other path is to say, I did X, Y, and Z, and I realized that the reason why I did that is because I wasn't really thinking about you. And I'm committing now to think more about you. I'm committed to be that this relationship is more important than my own personal selfish needs. Putting you and us first before myself. Which do you think is more powerful? The first time, I'm sorry for coming home late from work. I will be better about coming home late from work. Versus, I'm going to put you first. Hello. You had me, I put you first. Whatever. Right? That's tshuva. Tshuva really means acknowledging the relationship. Yes, it's important to acknowledge the specifics, because without acknowledging the specifics, one might not be sure that the specifics were noticed. So you have to acknowledge the specifics. But the overarching energy of tshuva is fixing the relationship. You're not a mechanic, right? You're not like tweaking the carburetor. That is, assuming it's in a car. It's addressing the core of the relationship. It's not about the specific item. It's about a much deeper theme. In the language of Kabbalah, Chassidus, it's not about the ratzon. It's not about what God wanted that we messed up with. It's the Baal HaRatzon. It's addressing the one who wanted. Not the want, but the one who wanted. It's addressing the subject, not the object. It's addressing the person, in this case, not the person, God. It's addressing the other in the relationship and not the technical item that was or wasn't done correctly. That's what Shuva is. Shuva is where I transcend the specific and I go to the core of the relationship. I repair the relationship. That's powerful. That's very powerful. So Teshuvah has the ability. When a person says, I've been neglectful in this area and that area and the other area, and I'm going to fix all these things. All right, yeah, yes or no. Person says, I'm committing to put you first and to put us first, that this is more important than anything that I personally want, and whatever it is that I want you to be happy. I want us to be happy. That fixes everything, because you're addressing the core. So teshuvah is much deeper than the specific mitzvot. Are you with me on this? The mitzvot are action items. Again, think of a relationship. Think about a marriage or any close relationship. So everyone has, on some level, either overt or either obvious or not so obvious wants and desires in a relationship and expectations. And that constitutes the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of a relationship. You do this, I do that, and I do this for you. And then there's the deeper stuff, which is the commitment, the love, the commitment, the respect in a relationship. That's much deeper than all the individual items. who's going to do carpool and who's going to cook and who's going to do the shopping and who's going to show up when and how and what, and who's going to, all of those are technical details. The main thing is the relationship. The relationship is, I'm going to put respect first, respect and then love. And right, that's the core commitment. That's the core of a relationship. Same thing with God. God says 613, a laundry list of do's and don'ts, 248 do's, 365 don'ts. This is what I want, God says. What happens when we're not perfect? Because we're not perfect. What happens when we don't act in a perfect fashion? Again, there's two ways. The obvious way is to fix what we broke, to fix what we missed. Okay. A deeper way is to touch on the essence of the relationship. Say, I'm recommitting to you. And automatically it means I'm gonna get back to the list. But I'm not starting with the list, I'm starting with the core of the relationship. That's what shuv is, that's what shofar is. So shofar is deeper than all the mitzvot. So how can we suspend, he's asking, how can we suspend shofar, which is about reconnecting with God, with love, commitment, and respect? How can we suspend shofar? Because some guy might carry the shofar in a public domain, not knowing how to. So no shofar? It seems kind of crazy. Let's continue a little bit more. We'll conclude in just 2 minutes. Furthermore, he says all the influx of divine energy for the entire year. Oh, this is powerful. The influx of divine energy for the entire year, both the spiritual influx for the fulfillment of Torah mitzvot over the entire year, as well as the physical influx, i.e. the flow of life force for the worlds, the entire flow of energy for the whole year, spiritual and physical. The capacity to be in the relationship with God, as well as the capacity to enjoy life, all of those energies are elicited back inside through blowing the shofar, as described in the Zohar and the writings of Rizal. We don't have an opportunity right now to delve deep into that. But when we sound the shofar, it's not just tooting our own horn, as it were, but it's actually eliciting tremendous energy and blessings from above. And we're going to cut that out. We're going to miss that on Rosh Hashanah when it falls out on Shabbat. So again, it's quite puzzling. He asks, how could the sages have suspended such a mitzvah because of a mere precaution? It's not even a strong probability. It's maybe somebody might carry it in a public domain, not knowing how to blow it and want to go to the rabbi. Just 3 elements of the question. It's one question with 3 parts. Question is, why are we suspending shofar when, number 1, it is a far-fetched scenario that we're worried about. Number 2, shofar is such a lofty mitzvah. And number 3, it elicits all the blessings for the year. How does it make sense? We're gonna go a little bit further. Let's keep on going a little bit. Give me another minute or 2. Now I know I asked for 2. I'm walking that back. Now the Talmud Ibid says that the Torah itself alludes to this suspension in the verse, remembrance of the sounding of the shofar. There's a verse in Torah that says Zichron Shua. It talks about remembering the shofar. There's a verse that calls Rosh Hashanah the day of shofar sounding, and there's another verse that says it's the day of remembering the shofar. According to the Talmud, there's an opinion that says, the fact that the Torah calls it a day of remembrance of shofar means that sometimes you don't blow the shofar, you just remember it, meaning that when Rosh Hashanah occurs on Shabbos, there's only remembrance of the shofar, but it should not be sounded. The same is written in Midrash Rabbah Emor at the end of chapter 29 in Jerusalem Talmud Rosh Hashanah 4:1. Let's continue. We're going to go, by the way, 22 on page 22. We're going to go till it says Rosh Hashanah Day of Judgment. We're going to finish off this section. The Jerusalem Talmud seems to imply that the shofar is not sounded because of the uncertainty of the date. That's the Jerusalem Talmud's opinion. When you have a 2-day Rosh Hashanah, you always have 2 days Rosh Hashanah. The first day is uncertain, so therefore you're not sure, and you're blowing shofar and Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. It's a little bit iffy. That's why we suspend it, not because of the guy that might carry it to the rabbi. Hence, it is sounded in the Beit HaMikdash, since the Beit HaMikdash is a model of on high, where it is known that it is indeed Rosh Hashanah. See the Jerusalem Talmud and Pnei Moshe's commentary.
Why would it be uncertain? I mean, all the other dates are certain.
Because it's Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh, it's always about the moon. Back in the day, it's a bit of a complicated scenario. But anyway, this answers the Talmud's question: if the prohibition of blowing shofar on Shabbos is a biblical law, how could they have sounded the shofar in the Beit HaMikdash? So that answers, if it's about the Sveika Diyam, it's about the uncertainty of the date, then that answers that question, and that could make sense. The truth is, however, but the bottom line is we do not follow this opinion. Rather, we maintain that it is a biblical mitzvah to blow the shofar even on a Rosh Hashanah, that it comes out on Shabbos, even outside the Beit HaMikdash, and is only because of Rabbi's decree that shofar blowing is suspended. The same is written without qualification in Tractate Sofrim, that because of the decree, shofar blowing does not supersede Shabbos outside the temple. Again, this is astonishing. How could the sage have suspended a positive mitzvah of the Torah because of Rabbi's decree? We end here. The point is, I wanted to get through this because I don't want to restart this next time. The point is, we end up with the same question. We had a potential answer. Well, maybe it's not biblical, it's rabbinic. He says no, according to most opinion and the Babylonian Talmud, which is the way we go in Jewish law. The bottom line is that shofar sounding on Rosh Hashanah is biblical. The fact that it's suspended on Shabbos is rabbinic. And the question is, why would the rabbis, they could do this, but why would they have suspended shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on Shabbos, just because some person might not be proficient in the blowing of the shofar and carry the shofar in a public domain? Doesn't make sense. Such a far-fetched concern, such a powerful mitzvah, and what's at stake are the blessings for the whole year. What's clear here, if a question is an answer, we don't need an answer to have an answer. Are you with me on this? A good question is the answer. That's a good question. A good question is the answer. Sometimes it says a good question is half the answer. That's a mediocre question. A really good question is the whole answer. If the question is, how are we going to get the energy? If the shofar elicits the energy on Rosh Hashanah, so what's going to happen on Shabbos without shofar? What's the answer? We'll get the energy some other way. Are you with me on this? We don't need shofar in Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, also, yeah. So what about the relationship, right? So I'm focusing now on the result. We get the jackpot. But what about the relationship, the tshuva? Yeah. Right. It's like, what do I get out of this? It's like, actually, maybe nothing now. Now that you put it that way. Right. What about the relationship itself? Isn't that more important? The tshuva element, the bala ratzon, it's connecting, it's recommitting to the relationship. Yeah. And what we get from it. Right. So how do we get that without shofar? So, I mean, the answer is, without even developing the answer, because the truth is, this is not going to be answered. This won't be answered. No, it's really, when I say it won't be answered, it won't be answered. This is the passport. This is straight up the passport. No one's rechecking, right? So you go into Canada, you give your address. They're not checking up on you. Maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't gone to Canada in years. Anyway, the point is that the answer that's brought in other texts is that what needs to happen to the shofar happens through Shabbos itself. Shabbat accomplishes whatever has to happen. Rosh Hashanah Shabbat covers what the shofar usually does on a weekday. You with me on this? On a weekday, you need the shofar to reconnect. On Shabbos, day of reconnection, baby. That's what Shabbos is.
So why
We
do
think
you
it's a
need
day of
Rosh
rest.
Hashanah?
Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah Shabbos combo action. That's where you get it. See, you need 2 out of 3. So if it's Rosh Hashanah and it's a weekday, you need shofar. Rosh Hashanah and shofar. If it's Rosh Hashanah Shabbos, you're covered. In the temple, they still did shofar to get the trifecta that we call the triple crown. That's like high stakes Rosh Hashanah's temple stuff. But anyway, I'm saying this very quickly just to share with you a bit of the kernel. But understand, a good question is the answer. The question is, well, what about all these energies? The answer is, we got the energies covered. The energies will be covered in a different way. But the point of all of this is to start opening up our minds to the dynamic that we play, to the role that we play in this relationship, to the role that we play in the Rosh Hashanah experience, where shofar is important, where our teshuvah, which is not repentance, which has a very heavy connotation, it's about pivoting, it's about realigning, it's about recommitting, it's about re-respecting and re-loving, it's about re-acknowledging the relationship. That's what's important. It's about the mekabel, it's about us embracing and giving space for the relationship, because God certainly gives space for us. All of this is God giving space. If God didn't give space, it would just be God. We wouldn't be here. All of this is God giving space. Now the question is, now that God has given space and made himself vulnerable, the question is, what do we do? So as we begin the month of El today, which is a very special day, it's very special for a number of reasons. Beginning of El, 30 days for Rosh Hashanah. It's also my son's birthday. Shaya Sollish's birthday is today. He's 11 years old. As I reminded him last night, got 2 years to the big 1-3. Leia's birthday is the 5th of, yes, it's the 28th of August. Yeah, Leia's English birthday. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, I knew that. So yeah, Leia's English birthday, her Hebrew birthday, her Jewish birthday is Thursday. And it's also, we have our friends here, Alex and Mariana. Alex has been a big proponent of this, Rosh Chodesh El being Yom Tzedakah, a day of giving in preparation for the holidays. And Alex and Mariana have created like a global movement for Yom Tzedakah. So it's a very special day as we enter into the month of Elul and we get ready for the holiday season, which is going to be about 60 days now. Like buckle up. Thank God for the 3-point harness, because like we're going to need all points of contact here. Let's remember that God is not scary, that God is not dogmatic, God is not finger wagging. How come you didn't? Right? God is rather loving. God is caring. God wants more than we will ever know. God wants an authentic relationship with us. And God has given us that space and that context. It's completely up to us. Will we reciprocate? Will we, even more than reciprocate, initiate? God has given us his numbers, his number. Question is, will we slide into his DM? Is that what they call it? Oh no, was that a bad phrase? Whoops. Right. Is that yeah. All right. Yeah. Who knows? It is. All right. Whatever. Will we reciprocate? It's on the shades. I'm not even involved in this. I don't know these people. Will we reciprocate by even initiating this round of the relationship? That's up to us. So L time, let's do it. Let's jump in. Let's commit ourselves a little bit more. Nothing major. My big theme this year is $12 pieces. I guess you guys don't know the story. I koshered my oven. I have a double oven, wall oven situation. Hit self-clean. The top one cleaned perfectly. The bottom one, I come back a few hours into the process. The screen is blank. It's black. No response, nothing. It's dead. DOA. The door is locked now. It's built into the cabinets. I'm thinking like, okay, I guess I'll just pull out my hacksaw and just start hacking the kitchen up. Like I can't, the oven's, it's broken. It's locked. You can't pull out of the cabinetry unless you unscrew it, that you need the doors open. So I'm like, great. And this was like 2 a.m. So I'm like, I'm going through all of this at 2 a.m. I'm like, oh, I broke my house, right? That's my, Leah, you know this story. Okay, I will, Leah, first of all, Leah, happy birthday. We've been talking about social media, so it's perfect. I have a social media birthday today. So it's 2 a.m. and am I going to say that I didn't like, am I going to say that I just went to sleep without waking up late? No. I'm like, hey, I broke the oven. But it's fine, go back to sleep. I'm like, Anyway, so I just had to share it at 2 a.m. You got to share it with some, the guilt and the shame and all the emotions of like, anyway, so I called up GE the next day because they make the oven. And they sent a few days later, they sent out a repair guy. This guy knows Crown Heights. He knows the Rabbi. Yeah, this guy. He's like, oh yeah, I used to work in Crown Heights. First person I ever worked for, it was late Friday night. She's like, you write the check. I'm like, I write the checks. Like, I can't write the checks. Like, what? He's like, there's a great rabbi who lived there. I'm like, passed away like 15 years ago. I'm like, yeah. I take him to my living room. I'm like, is that the guy? He's like, yeah, that's the guy. He's like, yeah, I lived in Queens, 4 blocks away from where he's laid to rest. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. This is absolutely crazy. The guy, he opens up the top because the top was fine, right? That was kosher before. He takes a screwdriver, pops the bottom, opens up the door. He unscrews it. Okay, 3 seconds in, we're in business. He takes it apart. By the end of the story, it's a $12 thermostat piece. I don't know if it's called thermostat. I feel like that's for HAC. Anyway, it's a $12 piece that he repairs. And so to me, and I've been living with this, is things that seem like big problems sometimes boil down to tiny pieces. And a little change can go a long way. And I also believe that sometimes the little change doesn't always have to be in the direct area that you want to change. It could be any little change. Like just a small change can go a long way. So time for change, but don't make it too big that it should not happen. Make it manageable, $12 a piece. Thank you for joining me this morning for Kabbalah Cafe. Shavua Tov. No, not $12 pizza. No way. Kosher. Yeah, we have to find the chauffeur. Is that, do you know, is there a chauffeur in the building? Is there a chauffeur?
Oh, good question.
Because I forgot mine. You would think, right?
Rabbi, you might get one extender.
Oh, I don't want to take it from the shender. All right, so next week I'll be better, hopefully, and bring my chauffeur. I don't know. He lives somewhere in Atlanta. No, he's not a Jewish guy. No, he's like no. He's not a Jewish guy. No, he's like from the island somewhere. He's like but he lived. No, because Crown Heights is very much like Caribbean. Yeah, like Caribbean. Oh, I don't know. Is it my second faux pas? Pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Repairing for my foot.
Oh yeah, he's great. I don't have his direct contact though. I just called GE HQ. I don't remember. It was all a blur. I just called the 800 number. GE customer support. Yeah. He might be the local guy, so you might get him. He's great. It is great to see you. He made it so easy. Oh, so sweet. Yeah, you better get it right.
Rabbi,
Yes.
when you were talking about the superficial parts of a relationship, like who's going to carpool, who's going to sell their house? Is that part of it? Is that like part of those little things that you have to negotiate?
Wait, say it again.
When you said who's going to carpool, who's going to sell their house?
Yes, right. Little details. Exactly. Mariana, great to see you. Ray, great to see you. Yaakov. Yes, Ray.
I wanted to ask you, have you made a decision about the Parsha classes during the week?
Not yet. Stay tuned. I have an idea brewing. It's probably going to be a bit of a different context, time and place. But stay tuned. No announcements yet, but I will. It'll be announced soon in the next week or two.
Oh, good.
All right.
Looking forward to that.
Pleasure. Joy and Tim, great to see you. Susan, Adam, David, Gewaldic, amazing. We have a beautiful in-person crowd as well. Oh, it's great. Thank you all for the love and the support and for being here. It's just very heartwarming. Thank you. It's a good question. Leave it here. I'll collect it. Thanks. All right. We'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov. Stay tuned for more exciting announcements coming up. By the way, if anybody wants to reach me, it's Rabbi Ari at the Torah Center ATL.org. That's the new email address. Rabbi Ari at the Torah Center ATL.org. Longest email address ever. See you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Sending lots of love. Bye, guys.